We got it.
Yeah. We are live. Hi, everyone.
How do you do?
Let me get into my YouTube so I can get on my settings set and I can see the chat. Give me one moment. Hope everyone's having a good Saturday. I can get on my. Oh, we've got one person here so far. Hi, Dolly. Hello, Carol Clark. Good to see you.
You can see me gazing off into space. I'm not really ignoring that. I'm actually looking at her. Her computer says it looking away.
He's really looking at me. Imagine that. Let's see. Where'd my chat go? There you are. Hey, Deb. Good to see you. Hi, Karen H. Just going to sit here and say hi to everyone for a few minutes so I can, then I'll get started with everything. The case I'm going to be talking about is, as you can see from the title, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes Disappearance. Can you hear me okay? Volume okay? Can you hear Gordon okay?
Test, test, test.
Can you hear Willie okay? He's barking.
Sure you can hear Willie just fine.
Willie.
Willie, shut up.
Shut. Willie.
You smell like a pickle.
Hi, Jason Mom Mezio. Hello. We'll wait and get a few more people in here before we get started. I think you'll find this case interesting. There's a lot of information to go over. Hopefully we can get it all done today. But I think it'll keep your interest. Yes, Deb said she can hear us okay. Carol said she can hear us.
I'm gonna look at the front door so it looks like I'm here.
Oh, it's okay. Really. No problem. Let's see, Dolly, you're having a great Saturday. Have your youngest grandson. Oh, that's always special. I love it when I have my grandkids. It's my absolute favorite. We've been watching our great granddaughter some, and she's 3 months old now. She's precious. I just love rocking her in the rocking chair and she goes to sleep, and you can just get those cuddles while they're sleeping and being so good. Yeah. Hey, Mandy Hall. Hey, Cat Black. Hey, Lisa D. Gordon said Lisa. Glad you're all here on this Saturday afternoon. I don't know how the weather is where you are, but it's kind of nice here. Sun shining and
66 degrees.
Oh, 66 degrees. Beautiful outside today.
No wind. For Oklahoma, that's saying something.
Oh, wow. We don't have wind. We need to be outside doing this. We should have just set it up on the patio.
Patio.
They said they don't hear you quite as clear as they hear me.
I'll speak out.
He for both of us to be on camera and not be squished in together like this, he's using his phone, but he has to mute because if we don't, it'll be a lot of echo and feedback. So that's why we're doing it this way. Hey, Lucy J. She says, hi, Big Gordon.
Yeah.
Love and hugs back to you.
I was going to use my laptop. We discovered 5 minutes before we started my laptop doesn't have a camera.
Yeah, that didn't work. Gordon's laptop has no camera. So, whoops, that didn't work out. But anyway, I think I'll go ahead and try to get started on this case. Like I said, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes disappeared on July the 8th, 2013. They were actually started July the 7th, 2013. They were in a car with a guy by the name of James Con Nip.
I tell them this is an Oklahoma case.
Oh.
It's local for us.
Yeah, this case takes place in my hometown. It starts off in my hometown of Wilson, Oklahoma. That's one of the reasons I picked this case, is because it's near and dear to me, being in Oklahoma. And now that I've lost track, Gordon interrupted me. Anyway, they started off in Wilson, Oklahoma, and they were at a store and saw the police over in a parking lot. And they were right in the car with a guy by the name of James Con Nip, which I'll refer to as Con from here out. And Con was driving his girlfriend's car, which was a 2012 Honda Accord. And he decided to mess with the Wilson Police Department. He went over where they were, did donuts in the parking lot, and spun gravel onto the police cars. Can you still hear me okay? Just want to double check before I continue. Just double checking that you can hear me. My voice tends to go in and out, so I just want to make sure. Thanks for being here, everyone. Okay, good, Karen. Thank you. So they spun out and peeled gravel onto the Wilson Police Department's vehicle. So the Wilson Police Department attempts to pull him over. Con didn't pull over. He gave chase. So they head through Wilson out onto a south highway that is heading towards Love County. They drive in the opposite lanes traffic. They turn their lights on and off on their car. They turn them off, leave them off while they're driving erratically. Turn the lights back on. I can only imagine that Molly and probably Colt were very scared because speeds went up to 120 miles an hour. Wilson Police Department noticed that they were going to be heading towards Love County, which is out of their jurisdiction. So they contacted the Love County Sheriff's Department to assist. Love County Sheriff's Department did come and assist, and they got off on a back road and were throwing gravel and dirt all over all of the police cars. And the dust was very bad because high speeds, dirt, gravel, all over the place. So they stopped the police chase. They were, it wasn't safe to continue the way Con was driving the car. So they continued on. They got onto Long Hollow Road off of around Oswald Road and Pike Road in those areas. And Long Hollow Road dead ends, but Con's family lives off of Long Hollow Road. So he continued on to
a compound.
Well, sort of, kind of a compound. They it said that his family has about 175 acres out there. And I think other family members also have land out there. And someone said probably have around 1,000 acres of family land. I don't know if that's exactly right, but for sure, there's about 175 acres. Hi, Jenny Barnes. Hi, Tracy. So they continued on Long Hollow Road and got near where Con lives, pulled the car off of the road onto a pullout. I don't know if it's someone else's land, but I think it was. And they all jump out of the car. Molly, Colt, and Con. Con took off one direction. Molly and Colt took off another direction. And Molly and Colt weren't familiar with this area. They weren't familiar with this area, so they didn't know where they were. And Con left them. He went home. And the police came, looked around some more, but didn't find them. So about 2 a.m., I believe it was, the police finally left. Now it said that the Love County Sheriff's Department was called off the scene. I'll kind of explain a little bit more about that in a few minutes.
I just wanted to bring up for y'all who aren't familiar, Love County is the southernmost county in Oklahoma. It's right on the Red River.
It's close. It's close to Texas. It's right across the Red River from Texas. Hi, Peggy K.
Very rural.
It is very rural. Not a lot out there. People's ranches, cows, horses, that kind of thing. So sometime after they've been out in the woods, it said that Molly made a 911 call, but there was no communication on that call. It was just you could hear a little bit of noise, but you couldn't hear, no one talked. So this call went into the Love County Sheriff's Department, or the Love County 911 system. The 911 operator called Molly back. There was no communication back from Molly. Just a second here. Molly didn't answer. So she did make, I believe, less than 20 911 phone calls during this episode. And there was no one dispatched to go out to check on what was going on. Well, the 911 dispatcher had no way of knowing that it was Molly Miller and that she was in the car for this high-speed chase with the police. The only thing that 911 operator knew was about the car that was involved in the chase and the driver. They didn't know who was in the car with Con. So that might kind of help explain why they didn't send someone out to investigate, but most 911 policies are, if you get a phone call, a hang-up call, and you try to call back and no one answers, that could be a domestic situation, domestic violence. So they normally will send someone out to investigate. This didn't happen. There was no one sent to investigate. Wait 1 second. So there was no one sent out to investigate. And Molly and Colt were stuck in the woods. They didn't know where they were. So Colt reportedly climbed a tree to try to see where they were, as far as where the nearest road was, how they could get out of there. Well, he told his friends later in a phone call that he fell out of the tree and broke his ankle. It wasn't just a regular fracture of his ankle, it was a compound fracture. His bone was sticking out. So there was no way that Colt could get out of there without somebody coming to get him. So they called friends and asked for help to please come find them. And Molly called some of her friends. Some of her friends didn't answer the phone, and Colt had 4 friends come out and look for him, but they never could find him. They drove up and down the road while they were on the phone with Colt. They were honking the horn. They were flashing their lights. That Colt never could hear a horn honking. They even ran into a rancher out there that shot his gun off to see if Colt could hear the gunshot, and he couldn't hear the gunshot. So basically, they're stuck out there. They can't be found. Colt's friends went to Con's house. They asked, while they were on the phone with Colt, they asked Con if he knew where they were so they could go get them. Colt said, "Oh, they're fine." I mean, Con said, "Oh, they're fine. They're okay. It's just a joke." Well, Colt said, "Let me talk to Con." So the friend gave the phone reportedly to Con, when Con said, and Colt said, "You know where I am, you MFer. You better tell them where we are so they can come and get us." And he also walked away from the friends and talked to Colt privately. And he came back and gave them the phone back and told them, the friends were like, "Tell us where they are." And Con said, "Do you remember where the Mustang was?" He was talking about a vehicle that was stolen and found on, I believe it was found on property out there. And the guys and the girls were like, "Yeah, okay." So they said, "Well, they're near where the Mustang was." So they went and looked in that location. They couldn't find them. They finally had to give up and contact Molly and Colt's families and tell them, "Look, they're lost out here somewhere and we can't find them." So are you still hearing me okay? Everything okay?
Yeah, more if you told them how old these kids were.
Molly's 17 years old. Colt is 21. And I believe Con is 22 when all this was taking place. And there's also the belief that there were drugs involved, specifically methamphetamines. Methamphetamines are a big problem in southern Oklahoma, where this took place. There are a lot of drug issues down there. Now I'm gonna have to look at my notes for a second.
If you watch that TV show, Justified, this most regional neural, it's looking at that's kind of what you picture.
I don't think that's what they did, but
Rural Oklahoma.
yeah, that's not what they were doing.
You know, all I can picture is say how dark this was. If they had a Patty's from down there, and you go to her mom's house. If you got away from her house a little ways, it was dark. You really the stars was what they like.
I think for some reason that particular night it was really dark. I don't think the stars were shining. I don't know if there was cloudy, exactly what was going on, but it was reported to be very dark that night. They're having a hard time understanding you, honey.
Okay.
You may have to scoot over closer to me.
Dang.
Mm-hmm. Closer.
Look at a dog there.
Oh, let me move her. Say hi, Bitsy.
Is it easier to hear me now? I'll talk towards your computer.
Can you hear Gordon better now? Hi, Lori Colley. Hi, Jackie Burns. So The 911 operator did ping the phone when Molly called 911. It was off of Long Hollow Road and Pike Road. Now, Molly did talk to Colt and decide that the only way they were going to get out of there is if she got to a road and walked for help. So she reportedly left Colt in the woods and took off to try to get some help. And that's kind of where that part of the story ends. The families then reported the case, the disappearance to Molly's family. Since they were from Wilson in Carter County, they reported her missing to the Wilson Police Department. Now, I'm not sure what Colt's family did. I don't have as much information about Colt as I do Molly. Now, Molly's family also tried to report her to missing to Love County because they knew the area where she disappeared from, but the Love County sheriff wouldn't take the report, said it wasn't basically his problem. So to give you a little background and knowledge, Con Nip, the driver of the car, is a cousin to the sheriff, Joe Russell. Joe Russell had been the sheriff for about 15 years, I believe. And he was cousins with Con. So that might explain why the sheriff's department was called off. They weren't called off on the radio. They were called off by cell phone. The sheriff's deputies were contacted by cell phone and told to not pursue them any further because the sheriff knew who they were pursuing. Well, in the meantime, Con's girlfriend that next morning reported her car stolen. Her report was that Con did have her car, but he returned it about 30 minutes before this high-speed chase was reported. And when she woke up the next morning, the car wasn't in the driveway. So she reported it to the Long Grove Police Department because that's where she lived. Well, about 2 weeks later, the car was found out near Con's property, his family's compound. And which led the Oklahoma Highway Patrol to get involved and investigate the car being found out there and the report to the insurance company that the car was stolen. So there were charges filed against Con's girlfriend because of insurance fraud, fraudulent insurance report. And you can see there was another charge too. There's felony for a fraudulent insurance claim and a misdemeanor charge for false reporting. And she did get convicted of that crime and did spend some time in prison. I'm not sure exactly how long she spent in prison. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you that on January the 3rd, 2014 was when that arrest warrant was issued for Sabrina, the girlfriend. On January 3rd, 2014. Now remember, this happened July the 7th and 8th of 2013. Well, on January the 3rd, 2014, there was also a probable cause affidavit done on James Con for eluding an officer while endangering another. That's a felony. And also for reckless driving, which is a misdemeanor. And arrest warrant was issued and he was arrested and he did get sent to prison for a sentence of 10 years, which he served 4.
The rest was probation.
Yes, the rest was on probation.
Right. Sorry, the rest.
Here's Gordon, he's got a call.
Uh,
The rest was on probation. Now, there was a family press release on January the 16th, 2014. There was a tip that came in about someone holding a weapon for Con Nip. The police did investigate that. They went to this witness's house who had the weapon, and they did find out that they found a 9mm semi-automatic pistol that was given to them reportedly by family members of Con Nip, which I understand that was Con's mother that gave that weapon to this person to hold. And the weapon was reportedly wrapped in a towel or a cloth that had red stains on it that appeared to be blood. Along with that weapon, they also found a machete that was also given to this person to hold. And there was reportedly red dried substance that appeared to be blood on the machete. These things, both of these weapons were gathered and taken into custody and given to, I believe, the OSBI to be ran for evidence. And the OSBI got involved for sure in July of 2014. The Bureau of Indian Affairs got involved and took over this case November 2022. So as you can tell, this case is still active and going.
Get the FBI involved too, doesn't it?
It did have the FBI involved. I think when the Bureau of Indian Affairs took over, the FBI kind of stood back a little bit because they're pretty much related. They're both federal agencies.
Just want to remind you, Oklahoma has lots of Indian land. So
and the reason they got involved is because Molly is half Chickasaw Indian. And they've really been working, the Bureau of Indian Affairs has really been working on missing and murdered Indigenous people. So that's been a new big focus for them. They've been really on top of that. Just a moment, I'm looking at my notes. Just so you know, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and tell you that in 2016, Joe Russell was arrested for 2 counts of corruption and 2 counts of habitual or willful neglect of duty.
This is the Love County Sheriff.
That's the Gulf County Sheriff. That's cousins with Con Nip. So he was arrested due to a grand jury decision that was made. And I'll tell you, he didn't, from what I understand, he didn't spend a day in jail. He was given probation for, I don't remember how many years he was given probation for, but it was unsupervised probation. He was also took a leave of absence in 2016 when he was being investigated, and he resigned from office. When Joe was out of jail after he'd been arrested, there was a reporter that went out to talk to him, and someone that was related to Crime Watch Daily. They went out to try to talk with Joe, and he was in the house, and the reporter was knocking on the door, and Joe was saying, "Come in, come in." Well, there was a security guy with this reporter, and the report told the reporter, "Do not go in, do not go in that house." So she didn't go in, and they left. Joe told them after she didn't go in, she said, "Can you come out and talk to me?" And he said, "Get off my property, you're trespassing." So they left. This story has been on Crime Watch Daily. It's also been on the Oxygen channel. And there's a couple of podcasts out there about it. So if you want to look for Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, there's a podcast called Partners in True Crime that have done a series of podcasts about this case. Does anybody have any questions so far? Hi, Heads Up, 7 Up. Hey, Ladybug Toes. Hey, help me, Rhonda. Clarissa, hello. Give me just a minute. I'm going to turn my camera off and take a drink. I'll still be here. There's more to come, but this is like a little intermission. We're gonna talk about more of the corruption that has gone on in Love County in just a moment. Yes, Heads Up, 7 Up. I mean, Karen H. They are still both missing. They are. There have been searches out there on property adjacent to the Nip family's property, but they have not been able to get a search warrant signed by the district attorney to search the Nip property. They tried, but they couldn't get one signed. So the Nip property has not been searched, but there have been many searches and with cadaver dogs on the adjacent property to the land as close as they could get to the Nip property. Now, there's a Facebook page called Operation Find Molly Miller. If you're interested, you can join that Facebook page and follow the case. Operation Find Molly Miller is the name of it.
It's a pretty active.
It is. It's a very active Facebook page. There's always information being posted there. Paula Fielder is Molly Miller's cousin. And Paula created this Facebook page, and Paula has been instrumental in pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to get this case solved. She wants to find her cousin, Molly. So Paula has been very instrumental in getting things done on this case. She has gotten Klein Investigations. I don't know if you've heard of Klein Investigations, but they're all over the United States. They've been involved. Texas EquiSearch has been involved. Thank you, Bobby D. I appreciate that.
I've got a dog between my feet. If you wonder why I keep fussing.
Taz wants to be picked up. Tazzy. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to go over a criminal or a court proceeding that was held. This was to give you a little background. Joe Russell's son. You'll hear all the details in this court hearing about Joe Russell's son. This was a court hearing to see if Willie Russell, Joe's son, would be released from jail. He was arrested for selling methamphetamines out of the county sheriff's vehicle, $200 worth of methamphetamines in Carter County. And methamphetamine use is a federal crime. So once he was arrested locally by the local police, he was also arrested federally. And this was a federal hearing that was held to see if he would be released from jail. So Gordon and I are going to go over this, and I'm going to read the parts of the attorney and the court. Gordon's going to read the part of the witness. It says, in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Oklahoma, United States of America, plaintiff versus George William Russell, also goes by Willie Russell. And this is the transcript of detention hearing before the Honorable Kimberly E. West, United States Magistrate Judge, November 16th, 2015. I apologize. You're going to see a lot at the top of my head for this because I am going to have to read. I apologize. But I think you will find this interesting. This is for the plaintiff, Mr. Douglas A. Horn, Assistant U.S. Attorney from Muskogee, Oklahoma. For the defendant is Mr. J. Lance Hopkins, Attorney at Law in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And it goes on to say who the court reporter is. The witnesses called on behalf of the plaintiff is Steve West, the FBI. And there's direct examination by Mr. Horn, and there's cross-examination by Mr. Hopkins. The court. Good afternoon. This is in the case of, and it gives a number, United States of America versus George William Russell. We are set today for a detention hearing. Mr. Douglas Horn appears for the U.S. Attorney Office. Mr. Lance Hopkins appears as counsel, having been previously appointed with the defendant. Gentlemen, are you ready to proceed? The United States is ready, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Everyone says yes, yes, we're ready to proceed. I'd like to call Agent West with the FBI as our first witness. Am I orange?
You're orange.
This is Mr. Horn speaking. Sir, would you please state your first and last name for us and spell both?
Steve West. S-T-E-W-E-S-T.
Sir, how are you employed?
Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And how long have you been with the FBI?
Approximately 11 years.
And as a part of that training and experience, are you the case agent in the case involving the United States of America versus George William Russell?
Yes, sir.
And does George William Russell also go by the name or the nickname of Willie Russell?
Yes, sir.
All right. And as part of that investigation, are you aware of the evidence that was presented to the grand jury to secure the one count indictment that Mr. Russell now faces in this court?
Yes.
That involves a May of 2015 drug distribution. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that drug distribution, could you tell the court some of the facts associated with that particular charge or case?
Yes. This was a case that was done jointly with the Carter County Sheriff's Department and the Oregon Police Department. They had a confidential informant who purchased someone for Mr. Russell.
Just checking the chat real quick.
Can they hear me?
Can you guys hear Gordon okay? Before we go any further? Just let us know if you can hear Gordon okay. You're too low, honey. I'm gonna scoot my laptop over a little bit so that we're closer together. And maybe you can hear him more. Now try to talk, honey, and see if they can hear you better.
Is this better to talk like this?
Can you hear Gordon now? Test, Gordon. Say test, test, test.
Test, test, test. I'm wearing my hearing aids, so it sounds really, really loud to me.
You're a little soft, but they can hear you.
Okay.
Now, where was I?
Down at the bottom of page 4.
And in the drug distribution, could you tell the court some of the facts associated with that particular charge or case? Okay. Sorry, guys. And this informant had a history of buying drugs from Mr. Willie Russell in the past?
Yes.
So do you know how long that Mr. Russell or Mr. Willie Russell had been selling drugs to this informant in that area of Oklahoma?
It was a number of years.
Okay, so in May of this year, there was a drug deal that was arranged. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did this defendant sell drugs to an undercover officer?
Yes.
How much drugs?
It was 2.8 grams. It was going to be an 8-ball. It was 2.8 grams.
An 8-ball is a drug term. Is that correct?
Correct.
It stands for 1/8 of an ounce.
Yes.
All right. How much money did the undercover officer pay Willie Russell in order to get this 8-ball of drugs?
$200.
Karen H., you can't hear? Which one of us can you not hear? You can go in the bedroom. Yeah, you will. Turn your camera on and let me see your phone. We're gonna split up and see if him doing this a different way is better. Is that a- We're gonna split up and see if you can hear him better on his phone.
Can they hear me now? Is that better?
Can you guys hear Gordon now? Can you hear me, Gordon?
What?
Can you hear me?
Hang on just a second. Not yet. I'm walking. Hang on just a second. I gotta try to get the volume up.
Sorry for all the technical issues, guys. I apologize. Hi, Aurora.
Can you?
Getting a lot of hearing aid feedback.
Stand by. Can they hear me now?
I can hear you. You're a
Can they
little
hear-
low. Say test, test, test.
Test, test, test.
Okay, I can hear you better now. Just talk loud.
What?
Speak loud.
I am speaking loud.
Not really, but okay. Okay, and after Willie Russell was arrested, was he read his Miranda?
He was.
Can you hear me okay?
Just keep going.
Did Willie Russell have the ability to do a written statement as to his involvement in that offense to which he was charged?
Yes.
Thank you, Ladybug Toes. And what did he do?
He created a written statement that basically said that he met some people at Oki's corner store and sold dope for $200. And then he clarified meth for $200.
So he did a written confession of the crime that he is charged with here.
Yes.
Now, Oki's Corner, could you tell the court a little bit more about Oki's Corner?
Oki's Corner is located on the southern border of Carter County, adjacent to Love County.
Hi, Sandy Law. And which side of the county is Okies Corner on?
Okies Corner is on the north side, which is in Carter County.
Was there a lot of discussion between Willie Russell and the CI or undercover officer about where this drug deal was going to take place?
Yes, there was. It took quite a while to set it up. Willie was not wanting to come into Carter County to sell the methamphetamine, so it took a while to set that up.
And where did the defendant want the drug deal to take place?
He wanted to stay in Love County.
And why would, based on your investigation and your training and experience, why would the defendant want the drug deal to take place in Love County and not in Carter County?
Because his father is the sheriff of Love County.
Who is the defendant's father?
Sheriff Joe Russell.
Leave her alone, Molly. Okay, and he is the elected sheriff of Love County?
Yes.
How long has he been the sheriff of Love County?
Since approximately 2000, or about 15 years.
Hi, Janice Wolf. All right, and based on your training and experience then, why would the defendant, oh, I'm sorry.
You're on line 11, honey.
Thank you. Based on your training and experience, then why would the defendant want the drug to take place in Love County?
There is a history of Willie being protected by the sheriff, protected by his father, not suffering consequences for his drug deals, drug purchases, sales, that type of thing.
All right, when you are talking, and I am saying based on your training and experience, do you have an active investigation ongoing right now?
Yes.
And have you interviewed a number of witnesses as a part of that investigation?
Yes.
And have a number of these witnesses also gone to the grand jury?
Yes.
And are you familiar with what their testimony is? Is that correct?
I am.
You are familiar. And that involves, this investigation involves the drug dealing of the defendant, Willie Russell, and how he is being protected by his father. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The sheriff.
Yes.
Now, what other evidence have you gained out of this investigation that the sheriff is protecting the drug dealing activities of Willie Russell?
Well, there's been the drug use for a number of years in Willie's house that he shares with the sheriff. Drug purchases, drug sales, drug use, open drug use in the house, and that has been going on with no consequences.
All right, so let me go over that again. That is at Sheriff Joe Russell's house, is that correct?
That's correct.
And this defendant lived with Sheriff Joe Russell
That's correct.
at his house.
Yes.
And during that time, and again, what time frame are we talking about?
At least since 2010, probably. It's been a number of years.
So since 2010, this defendant has been involved in using drugs and selling drugs.
Correct.
What type of drugs?
Methamphetamines.
And you have developed evidence and done investigative work that this dealing was going on out of or happening at Joe Russell's house?
Correct.
The sheriff's house,
Yes.
while he was active sheriff.
Yes.
Now, what other evidence do you have or have you developed that the sheriff was allowing this defendant to do drug dealing in the Love County area and protecting it?
Well, there are numerous people that have reported accompanying Willie in the Love County Sheriff's Office truck, selling methamphetamines out of the truck, using methamphetamines in the truck with no consequences.
Okay, let's be clear. When you say the sheriff's truck, is that a personal truck or a county vehicle?
I believe it is a personal truck that has the lights and sirens, and I'm not sure who has outfitted that, if the county paid for that or if that was done by personal money.
Love County is a small county, is that right?
Yes,
So this truck owned by Sheriff Joe Russell has lights. Do you mean lights on the top that could,
I think they are the subdued lights in the grill, front grill.
sirens where you can turn a siren on and stop somebody?
Sirens, radios.
Can you hear the police transmission in that vehicle?
That's correct.
A PA system so you could talk loud through that and give commands?
Correct.
And you have developed evidence that this defendant was able to use that sheriff's truck in order to do some of his drug dealings?
Yes.
Now, has the investigation also shown that Sheriff Russell protected this defendant, his son, by also allowing his son to threaten the execution of certain arrest warrants?
Yes.
Tell the court about that.
There's an ex-wife of Willie's who has on numerous occasions been physically assaulted by Willie Russell, and at least on a couple of occasions that has been covered up.
That ex-wife, what is her name?
Lindsay Price.
And you've interviewed her as a part of this investigation?
That's correct.
Lindsay appeared before the grand jury
That's correct.
and would be a key witness in any trial against this defendant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did Lindsay give information about the drug usage and the drug dealing of this defendant?
Yes. She indicated that it was going on openly during the time that she was married to him.
And during that time, she lived with this defendant at Sheriff Joe Russell's house?
I think they lived there for a short time and then they moved into a trailer that was close by.
Now, as a part of your interview with Lindsay, did she testify about being beaten by this defendant?
She did on numerous occasions.
And did she describe, if you would, the severity of the beatings that this defendant would give her when she was involved with them?
Yes, I believe she clarified beating to not just being slapped around a little bit. And she said at least on 20 occasions, and she is approximating, but on at least 20 occasions, he would punch her in the face, kick her, slam her up against walls, and beat her rather than just slap her.
Give me 1 second. And was there at least one occasion or more occasions where Lindsay was beaten of a significant degree by this defendant that she had to go to the hospital for medical care?
There was one occasion where Willie and Lindsay Price were riding in the sheriff's truck and something happened and Willie began to punch her, just repeatedly punching her in the face to the point that I forget whether she said she actually lost consciousness or not, but she developed a large cut over one of her eyes. Can they still hear me, honey?
Yeah, I think they can still hear us okay.
Okay.
And after she had been beaten by this defendant in the sheriff's truck, did she get immediate medical attention?
No, she didn't.
How long did it take for her to get medical attention?
I'm not sure. It was quite a while. He called, I think, when she kept asking for medical attention, I think she was telling him, "You need to take me to the doctor. I am hurt bad." He then called his sister.
You say he called?
Willie called his sister.
Okay. And had her come look at Lindsay, and apparently she agreed that Lindsay was hurt bad enough that she needed to seek medical care?
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm
that was me.
sorry. I answered your question. I'm sorry. I apologize. Who is this defendant's sister? Just say the first name, honey.
Sharitha Bone.
I said, just say the first names.
Sharitha Bone.
Honey, just say the first name.
Sharitha.
Okay, thank you. And could you spell that name?
Bone.
And then did Sharitha go with Lindsay to the hospital?
Yes. My understanding is that Sharitha transported Lindsay to the emergency room.
Could you spell Sharitha?
I believe it's Sheritha.
Now, what was according to Lindsay? Why was she escorted to the hospital by Sharitha?
Well, Willie and Sharitha didn't want Willie to go to take her to the emergency room for fear that there might be some repercussions. So Sharitha took Lindsay to get medical care, and Lindsay felt like the reason that Sharitha took her was to keep an eye on her and make sure she didn't report that Willie had beat her.
Did Lindsay provide information that Sharitha, the defendant's sister, was checking in with her father, Joe Russell, as to what she was saying to law enforcement, what Lindsay was saying?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know if she was checking in with Willie's father or with Willie.
She was checking in with somebody
Yes,
and giving updates or status as to what Lindsay was reporting to the hospital.
that's correct.
Did Lindsay ever admit that this defendant did that beating at that time?
No, she did not. I believe she said that she was in a fight, but she didn't name Willie as the one who had beat her.
And did Lindsay state that at that time she was intimidated and that's why she didn't say that this defendant had beat her?
Yes.
Based on your training and experience and what you know of this case, if this defendant was let out, do you think that there is a possibility that Lindsay could be further intimidated by this defendant or somebody in his family?
Yes.
Now, I started the question about warrants or the threat of arrest warrants by Sheriff Joe Russell has been used to protect this defendant or further the benefits of this defendant. Are you aware of any warrants that were threatened of a person by the name of Sarah?
Yes, I am.
And that's, I'm not going to say the last name.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Tell the court about how arrest warrants were threatened against Sarah.
There was a time when the individual Sarah had warrants for her arrest and she didn't have anywhere to stay. So Willie offered to let her stay at his house, which is also Sheriff Joe Russell's house.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Sarah was very hesitant to go stay at the sheriff's house with active warrants. Willie assured her that it's the safest place you can be. Don't worry about it. As long as you are with me, you are not going to be arrested.
And did Sarah then say that in order to stay there and not be arrested on those warrants, there were certain favors or things she had to go along with for this defendant?
Yes, she indicated that she was having sex with Willie.
Did she feel like she was compelled to have sex?
Yes, there were, anytime she said that she would try to stop his advances or not want to have sex with her, he would remind her that you got warrants, and as long as you're here dating me, you're not going to get arrested.
Now, during this time that Sarah was staying at Willie's house, which happens to be Sheriff Joe Russell's house, was she using methamphetamine?
Yes,
Where did she get the methamphetamine?
from Willie.
This defendant here?
Yes,
And did Sarah explain a particular method that this defendant would use to provide methamphetamine to Sarah?
yes. She referred to it as booty bumping.
And would you describe for the court what Sarah then described to you as to how meth was administered to her in this term called booty bumping?
It would be placed in a syringe. I believe it would be watered down first. It would be mixed up, placed in a syringe, and then shot into her rectum.
By this defendant?
Yes,
And that was the term they called booty bumping.
booty bumping. She said that happened approximately 3 or 4 times while she was there at Willie's house.
Did that give her some kind of higher rush of meth or ingested in a quick way?
That's my understanding, that it just hits your system a little quicker.
Now, at some point in time, did Sarah have enough of these advances and this conduct and try to leave Willie's house?
She did.
Tell us about that.
She initially left, went to an individual's house that she describes it as somebody that she didn't think Willie would mess with. At some point, she contacted him and said, "You need to bring my stuff to me from your house." She didn't feel comfortable going and getting her things, so she wanted him to bring her things to that location.
And again, for the record, you are saying him. She contacted Willie to get her things.
Willie, yes.
And then what happened?
Willie showed up driving the sheriff's truck again and got on the PA system as soon as he pulled up at the house and said something to the effect of, "Come get your shit," over the PA system in the truck.
All right. Now, did somebody ever come to that house or come to try to execute these arrest warrants on Sarah?
No, not at that house. Sarah stayed there approximately one night, and then she went to another individual's house and stayed there.
Whose house was that?
Corey,
And did law enforcement come to Corey? Was it Cody?
Corey,
Corey, to Corey's house in order to execute these arrest warrants?
yes. The next day, a Love County Sheriff's Office deputy showed up and said, "Joe," meaning Joe Russell, "sent me to arrest Sarah." Corey told the deputy that she is not here, and the deputy left.
And that deputy worked for Sheriff Joe, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do they work at the pleasure of Joe?
Yes,
There is no civil service protection or anything? They could be fired just like that
yes, they can be fired at his whim.
at the whim of Joe Russell? Okay. The next day, did somebody else come back to see if Sarah was there to execute the warrants?
Yes. At that point, the undersheriff, Harvey, and another deputy showed up at Corey's house or apartment.
And did they search the house for Sarah?
They did. I believe Harvey asked Corey if he minded if they looked around, and Corey said, "Okay." And they went in and searched.
And was Sarah there?
Yes.
And were the arrest warrants executed?
No,
Why not?
I don't know. Supposedly, the deputy saw Sarah hiding in the shower. It was a clear shower curtain. He called Harvey in. Harvey looked, saw her in there, closed the shower curtain, stepped back out, and spoke with Corey.
And what did the undersheriff tell Corey?
At that point, he told Corey that, "I think it would be a good time for the two of you to go visit your grandparents or visit their ranch or help out on their ranch or something like that."
Is somebody in law enforcement actually doing the right thing?
That's correct.
So the next day, did they in fact take the undersheriff's Harvey's advice?
They did not. They stayed at the apartment.
And who came the next day?
The next day or the next morning early, Joe Russell showed up banging on Corey's door.
The sheriff himself?
Yes,
And did he arrest Sarah?
he did.
And as a part of your investigation, were you able to show that the then Sheriff Joe called his son, the defendant, and reported what had happened?
Yes. He then placed a call to Willie and said, I got her, or something to that effect.
Now, Corey was there and he voiced some displeasure to the sheriff about how Sarah was being treated. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What happened?
Corey basically had some words with the sheriff to the effect of, why is it okay for her to live at your house with Willie and get high and have warrants and not be arrested? But then when she comes here, everybody's after her and she gets arrested.
And what happened to Corey for even saying that to the sheriff?
He was arrested for harboring a fugitive.
Based on your investigation, is that the kind of intimidation that is going on in Love County?
Yes,
Are you familiar with a person by the name of Zoe?
yes,
And I'm not going to say her last name. And are you familiar with a point in time when Zoe was 17? She called the police and said that she was being kidnapped by this defendant and being held against her will at the defendant's house?
yes. And she has been described to be as 17. So I'm assuming that is correct.
And being kidnapped and held at the defendant's house was actually Sheriff Joe Russell's house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would the sheriff's department come out and handle that call?
Yes. As a result of her telephoning the sheriff's department, a deputy arrived, and I believe at that time she told the deputy that something of the effect of, I really haven't been kidnapped, or she tried to let them know that she hadn't been straight up kidnapped by Willie. I believe the situation probably was that she and Willie had been drinking at Willie's house, and Willie was too drunk to drive her anywhere. So as a result, she called somebody at the sheriff's department to come get her.
Do you know the defendant's approximate age?
I believe she's around 40.
He.
He.
And Zoe at the time was approximately 17 based on your knowledge here today.
That's correct.
All right, but did the sheriff's deputy come out as a part of this call?
They did. One of them spoke with
Zoe?
what?
Zoe.
Zoe, okay. And then another one showed up, and the original deputy then went to Joe Russell's house in an effort to speak with Willie.
And were they allowed to do a full investigation?
I believe the deputy knocked on the door and Joe Russell came to the door. The deputy asked to speak with Willie, and Joe indicated something to the effect of, he is passed out in the back room. The deputy told Joe Russell that, well, I need to speak with him. Willie came out. He asked if he was going to be arrested. I believe the deputy said, no, we are just trying to find out what happened. I believe at that time, Joe Russell said something to the effect of, yeah, she has been here all, for several hours hanging out with Willie. At that point, I believe the deputy then went back to speak with Zoe again.
As a part of this investigation, are you also aware of any women that may have been taken into custody while partying at the Red River area?
Yes. It has been.
Hold on, guys. We got doggies barking. Okay, they're settled.
Let me find where I was, sorry.
Number one.
Okay, yes. It's been reported to us that at least on one occasion, possibly two, Sheriff Joe Russell has arrested females that were either high or drunk that were partying on the Red River in bikinis and then would take them to his house.
Now, where is Sheriff Joe Russell's house?
It's in the town of Leon.
How close is Leon, Oklahoma to the Red River?
I'm going to say approximately 4 or 5 miles as the crow flies.
So the reports that you've gotten as a part of your investigation is that there would be women in bikinis that would be down at the river. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this sheriff would go down there and do what with these ladies?
Basically arrest them for public intoxication. And then at that point, instead of taking them to jail, he would take them to his house where Willie was and either have, it's been reported, either have them dance or strip. Either Willie would strip them, sometimes Joe would. And these were apparently the kind of girls that once they realized they weren't going to go to jail, that they were just at another party, they would then go ahead and partake of the meth that Willie offered and then stay and party.
Okay, so the sheriff went to his in his sheriff's department's vehicle.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure which vehicle he was in.
Did the sheriff use handcuffs?
Yes.
So he handcuffed these ladies and brought them back to his house
Yes.
for this defendant to party with them.
Correct.
Now, one of the witnesses that you've interviewed as a part of this investigation and also appeared before the grand jury is, I'm going to have to use the name, Miss Hodges. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she has provided evidence and testimony of the acts of violence that you've testified about here to this court,
Correct.
and also the ongoing drug dealing activities of Willie. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Miss Hodges stated that she, first of all, was she involved in the drug buy associated with this particular charge that the defendant is here for?
She was the May 29th charge. Correct.
She was the UC,
Yes.
undercover,
Yes.
or not undercover, but the confidential informant.
Correct.
But she also been in a pattern of drug dealing with this defendant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
On numerous occasions while this defendant delivered drugs.
Yes.
Now, as a part of her cooperation in this case, has Ms. Hodges received any threats or incitements from people in order to maybe get Mr. Russell out of this case?
Yes, she has been worried.
Okay, tell us about that. What worries and what types of contact has she had that makes her worry?
Well, she has had contacts with known associates of Willie and Joe Russell, methamphetamine users that have attempted to lure her into Love County, away from Carter County, and into Love County. It has worried her.
How have people tried to lure her into Love County?
Basically trying to get her to come down there to purchase methamphetamines.
Now, as a part of the intimidation of witnesses that we've talked about, has there been a series of missing people over the last several years, which has caused people to have a concern over cooperating with law enforcement?
Yes.
Tell the court about that.
There are 3 individuals that come to mind immediately. The first one was an individual named Jordan. He disappeared and then he was rumored to have been murdered, and then later his remains were found in the area approximately a year later.
Okay. And are any other people missing that have created this concern? on anybody cooperating with law enforcement and going against Sheriff Joe Russell?
Yes, there are two individuals that have disappeared from that area, Colt Haynes and a female named Molly Miller. They disappeared around 2013 and have not been seen since.
Were they involved in drugs when they disappeared?
Yes,
Were they involved with people associated with Joe Russell when they disappeared?
yes,
And as you and other agents with the FBI have gone through interviews, has that made it even more difficult as a part of this investigation because of the real fear of these people disappearing?
yes. That has been an overlying theme of all the interviews that we've done. Everybody is very hesitant to talk. They don't want Joe Russell knowing that they are talking. So yes, I would say they're all scared.
Again, this investigation is ongoing.
It is.
In your opinion, do you believe if this defendant was realized, it would potentially hamper your ongoing investigation?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor. Mr. Hopkins, cross-examination. This is Mr. Hopkins. This is the defendant's attorney. This is Willie Russell's attorney. Agent, could I get your name again for the record?
Steve West.
Agent West, my client, Willie Russell, is not the sheriff of Love County, is he? He is not the sheriff of Love County, right?
No, he is not.
And he is not a law enforcement officer, correct?
That's correct.
Hold on a
Top of
second.
29.
Hold on. And he does not have the legal authority to place handcuffs on anybody or arrest anybody, correct?
Correct.
In fact, during your investigation, you found no evidence that my client, Willie Russell, has arrested anyone or placed handcuffs on anyone, correct?
Correct.
Just looking at the comments. Okay, in fact, during,
Line 8.
thank you. Now, as far as your investigation, are you familiar with my client's prior record, legal record, criminal record?
Am I familiar with it?
Right.
Yes,
And he has no prior drug convictions, correct?
that's correct.
In fact, the only time he has ever been arrested for drugs is the conduct which is the subject of this indictment, correct?
I believe that's correct.
So he is indicted for this controlled drug buy that happened in Carter County in May of this year, and he has not been arrested for anything prior to that, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Now, shortly after he was arrested in Carter County, he bonded out in Carter County, correct?
Yes,
And he was out of bond on that case up until the time he was arrested in this case on the complaint that was filed in October, around October 20th, correct?
and during that time that would be about between 4 and 5 months, a little over 4.5 months, correct, from May, from around to June 1st until late October. Somehow I got on, I'm sorry, that was my fault.
That's okay.
Anyway, yes, that's correct. Line 10.
And he is not arrested or charged with anything during that period that he was out, correct?
That's correct.
And you found no evidence that he was involved in anything illegal in that time period that he was out on release in the state case, correct?
That's correct.
And you have not found any evidence that he did anything at all to violate the conditions of his release in Carter County, correct?
That's correct.
He made his court appearances
As far as I know, he did, yes.
and there have been no allegations or evidence of any new crimes, correct?
That's correct.
Now, the charges in Carter County involve the exact same original conduct, which is the subject of the indictment in this case, correct?
That's correct.
The exact same transaction,
Yes,
and that's one single controlled drug sale of 2.8 grams of meth in exchange for $200, correct?
yes,
Now, my client has never been arrested for any crime involving violence, correct?
that's correct.
So when you look at considering this conduct in this case, what he was arrested for in May, my client has no prior drug arrest, correct?
Correct.
And he has no prior arrest for violent crimes, correct?
No prior arrest. That's, well, I'm not sure if the time that he assaulted Lindsay, I know deputies arrived at the scene, and I know Mr. Russell was saying that he would never do a day in jail. And at that point, he was actually arrested or not. I'm a little unclear on that.
Mhm.
Bottom of 31.
But you would agree with me that there is no record of him being arrested for,
That's correct. You asked whether he had been arrested, and I wasn't sure if on that occasion, technically, he was arrested or not.
when you reviewed his criminal record, it shows no prior arrest for violent crimes. You would agree with that, correct?
That's correct.
And certainly no convictions, correct?
Correct.
Now, after you arrested my client, were you involved in that arrest?
Yes.
Okay, in May of this year, correct?
No, not the arrest in May, the arrest in October.
Okay, are you familiar with the arrest that was made in May?
Yes.
You testified about that you interviewed my client and he made a statement. Was that after the October arrest or after the?
It was after the October arrest.
Okay, now he was arrested in October. Now, just to clarify, I believe I was asked was whether or not after he was arrested in May, whether he was read his rights, whether he created a statement, and I answered yes to those. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm answering the question.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Those are documents that I've reviewed from the May arrest. So he was interviewed twice, once in May after the arrest by state officials, I presume.
Yes.
And then he was arrested, and then he was arrested in federal court. He was interviewed by federal officials.
That's correct. When we arrested him in October, yes.
Now, he was polite and cooperative during those interviews, correct?
Correct.
Both times, both the state and the federal?
As far as when we arrested him, yes. I can't speak to the state arrest.
When you interviewed my client, he was polite, correct?
Correct.
He was cooperative, correct?
Correct.
He made no hostile or threatening statements towards you, correct?
Correct.
And he wrote a statement basically admitting his conduct as to what he had been arrested for.
He did not write a statement when we interviewed him.
Was that back in May when he wrote the statement?
That's correct.
When you arrested him, were you already familiar with that statement?
Yes.
Had you reviewed the records of that arrest in May when you arrested him in October?
Yes.
So the two times that he has been interviewed by law enforcement, he was cooperative on both occasions?
When we arrested him, he was cooperative, yes.
Now, you testified a lot about my client's father and other things allegedly happening in Love County. Now, isn't it true that my client has not been charged or indicted for any conspiratorial drug activity involving his father, correct?
That's correct.
So as we stand here today, he is only charged with the one thing, and that's this delivery of 2.8 grams of meth in Carter County, correct?
That's correct.
No, he has not been charged with anything else.
No,
No. Now, Lindsay, my client, was never charged or arrested for domestic assault involving Lindsay, correct?
well, that's why I'm a little unsure on the arrest. At the time, I know Sheriff Russell made a call to someone, and it was heard to say, just go sign some papers. You're going to be released OR. So whether he actually went in and we consider that arrest or not, I'm not sure.
Have you seen any records of an arrest outside of what somebody told you? I mean, any reports, police reports of an arrest?
No,
So the only evidence you have of an arrest is what someone said. You have not seen any police reports or, law enforcement documents are normally generated when someone is arrested, correct?
I'm trying to remember if I have actually reviewed police reports from that incident. I may have seen some, at least a report of that incident, but as far as I know, he wasn't actually arrested, put in cuffs that I know of. It may have happened, but
You would agree that when an FBI criminal background check is conducted on Willie Russell, that there is nothing involving such an arrest showing up in the background check, correct?
correct.
Now, you have never been provided any medical, wait a minute. Now, have you ever been provided any medical records for these injuries reportedly suffered by Lindsay?
Yes,
Have you reviewed medical records?
yes.
And what did those medical records state as to injuries?
Injuries consistent with what was described to us.
And what was that?
One of them was a cut over an eye. I believe she had stitches. There are a couple of different times that she sought medical care. So, I mean, we can go through each one, but on each occasion, there was medical care provided. Line 18.
So at the time that those medical, at the time that she sought that medical treatment, she didn't make any allegations regarding Willie, then did she?
No, she did not.
So when you review those medical records, there are no complaints by Miss Price that she was assaulted in any way based on a review of the medical records, correct?
Correct.
So she never made any allegations to the medical treatment providers that she was assaulted by my client, correct?
That's correct.
Sir, what have you done, if anything, to corroborate the statements made by Lindsay?
We talked to another individual that was called to Lindsay's residence when she had been beaten severely. He came over there to her aid or to try to assist her. He saw how badly she had been beaten and was threatened with arrest by Joe Russell. So that's one person we've spoken to. I talked to numerous people throughout the course of the investigation that have said you need to go talk to Lindsay. Willie used to beat the hell out of her continually, and nothing would happen because the sheriff would not let anything happen. So, as far as corroborating Lindsay, it is really just statements by numerous people that have been a witness to the abuse and the alleged cover up.
These individuals that have said that my client beat up Lindsay, is that based on what Lindsay told them or based on, or were they actually there to observe the abuse?
In some instances, it is things that they heard, and then in some instances, it's things that they actually witnessed or possibly that Lindsay Price told them. Yeah, yeah, this, if she was beat up, that she would tell them it was from Willie.
A lot of, suffice it to say, a lot of these people that you talked to in an attempt to corroborate Lindsay Price were basically just telling you things that Lindsay told them, right?
On occasion, yes.
Are you aware that my client has not been in contact with Lindsay in over a year?
I am not sure how long it has been since he has talked to her.
But you don't have any evidence that he has been in contact with her over the last year, do you?
No,
So you don't have any evidence that he is in contact with her at all presently, correct?
correct.
And Sarah, she never filed any complaints with law enforcement, correct?
No,
She never filed any complaints with law enforcement alleging that she has been raped, correct?
no, other than what she related to us, the FBI.
All right. What have you done, if anything, to corroborate those statements by Sarah?
Well, once again, we have talked to Corey, who, I mean, I can go through different interviews, but Corey backed up every bit of what she said. Their statements were almost, I mean, they followed very closely. So everything that Sarah told us, Corey at different time pretty much told us the same thing. Once again, other people would mention, if we were talking to them about something else, they would mention Sarah lived there. She had warrants and she was arrested, and she had warrants and she was arrested until she left Willie. So it has been mentioned several times before and after we spoke with Sarah.
And sir, if you don't mind, who is Corey?
Corey is the individual that Sarah went to stay with after she left Willie. She is the individual. She was staying in his apartment when Joe Russell sent the first deputy, then when he sent Harvey to arrest her, and then when he came himself and arrested her. Corey is the individual who was eventually arrested right after Sarah for harboring a fugitive.
Now, Corey wasn't present when Sarah allegedly said that my client forced her to have intercourse.
No,
Correct?
he was not. He was not one of the ones present in the house. No,
So he really couldn't cooperate that because all he knows is what she told him, right?
that's correct. He did not see them having sex.
So there is, you really don't have any evidence to corroborate those allegations by Sarah, just the word of Sarah, correct?
There is another individual that witnessed Sarah being booty bumped. Yes,
Is there any allegations that she was acting involuntarily, that she was being forced to do anything?
I think I almost dropped my papers. No,
13. So if Sarah, the evidence you have as to Sarah being booty bumped, Sarah did so voluntarily, correct?
yeah, I haven't talked to anybody that said that she was being held down or forced. So any coercion would have not been physical.
So no physical coercion as to Sarah.
As far as I know, correct.
Now, the sheriff of Love County is not the only law enforcement agency with jurisdiction over crimes happening in Love County, correct?
They are the only ones with jurisdiction outside of the town of Marietta.
But there are other investigative law enforcement agencies that would have jurisdiction to investigate alleged crime in that area.
Yes,
Would that include your office, the FBI office there in Ardmore?
correct.
And meth is a federal substance, federal controlled substance. So your agency has jurisdiction to investigate drug-related crimes in Love County, correct?
Correct.
There is also the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, which has jurisdiction to investigate crime throughout the state of Oklahoma, correct?
Correct.
And the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, OBN, would also have jurisdiction to investigate crimes.
Correct.
But there is no indication that Sarah or Lindsay or anyone else went to any of these other law enforcement agencies that have jurisdiction over Love County to make any complaints, correct?
That's correct. As far as I know, they did not.
but they could have, that option was available.
I would say possibly yes.
And again, while my client's father was the sheriff of Love County, there is no evidence that he had any close relatives working at OBN, the FBI, or OSBI, correct?
Correct.
Okay, let's go to the part about you testified that people have told you that Joe, my client's father, went down to the river and arrested women or handcuffed women. You don't have any evidence that my client really went down to the river and handcuffed or arrested anybody, correct?
Correct.
Now you have got this evidence that there were people have said that women or girls in bikinis down by the river were handcuffed. Have you interviewed any of these women or girls that were supposedly handcuffed?
No.
So we don't have none of these women or girls that were supposedly handcuffed have made any complaints, right?
Correct.
Have you identified any of them?
No.
Have you been provided any names of any?
No.
Is Hodges the only person that you talked to that testified that this happened or stated that this happened?
The only eyewitness to it. Correct.
So really the only evidence that you have that this stuff about handcuffing girls on the river and taking them to the house is based solely on the word of Hodges?
That's correct.
And Hodges does have a criminal record, correct?
Yes.
Now, finally, there has been testimony today about two missing individuals from the Love and Carter County area. Yes? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Who are those people?
Colt Haynes and Molly Miller.
Do you have any evidence at all that my client, Willie Russell, ever came into contact with those people or knew them?
No.
Do you have any evidence that my client would have a motive to hurt them?
No.
You don't have any evidence that he is connected to their disappearance at all, do you?
No.
You don't have any more evidence on him than you would me or anybody else in this courtroom, correct?
No.
Correct, that you don't have evidence, or or know that you don't have evidence.
Maybe you want to repeat the question.
Do you have any more evidence that my client was involved in their disappearance as you would me or anybody else in this courtroom?
No.
Pass the witness. Mr. Horn? Mr. Horn, no further questions, Your Honor. You may step down. Thank you. Any additional witnesses? Not from the government, Your Honor. Mr. Hopkins, yes, I would like to call my client's mother, Cheryl. Go ahead, Mr. Hopkins. Please state your full name for the record.
My name is Cheryl.
And ma'am, where do you reside?
Ringling, Oklahoma.
And are you the mother?
Okay.
Just a moment,
Court
Mr.
is
Hopkins.
just a moment, Mr. Hopkins. How do you spell your client, your last name, ma'am? And then she spells it out.
Go ahead. And ma'am, are you the mother of my client, Willie Russell?
Yes, sir, I am.
And are you divorced from his father?
Yes, sir, I've been divorced from his father for 40 years.
How old was Willie when you and his father divorced?
Willie was just probably 3 or 4 years old.
Growing up, who did he primarily live with?
He lived with me.
Now, where did you live with when Willie was growing up?
I lived in Ringling, Oklahoma.
And where did his father live?
His father lived in Leon.
And how far are those two towns apart?
Oh, 30 miles, I guess.
So they are two separate communities.
Yes, sir.
Growing up did Willie go to high school in Ringling?
Yes, sir, except for 1 year.
Did he go to Ringling Public Schools his entire, all the way from kindergarten through high school, except for 1 year?
Yes, sir, he did.
And where did he go that 1 year?
He attended Turner High School for 1 year. At that time, he had moved to, I don't know if Joe was living in Leon or close to Marietta, but Willie was living with him and he attended Turner High for maybe a year, if that much.
Hold on a second. Thank you, Jamie Lee. So growing up, did Willie live with his father 1 year and with you the other 17 years?
Yes,
Ma'am, what do you do for a living?
I'm a CNA,
Is that a certified nursing assistant, nursing aide?
certified nurse aide.
And can you kind of describe for the court what you do?
I work for a company called Cowboys. They are out of Stigler, Oklahoma. They have homes in Ardmore, Pauls Valley, all around the southern communities. We take care of mentally and physically challenged people.
Is that what you do in your job? Is
Yes,
you provide care for adults that are developmentally or mentally disabled,
yes, sir.
physically disabled?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now being a certified nurse assistant, did you have to go through some training?
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you for this court describe what training you went through?
I went to Votech for classes, but the company I work for, we have to take individual classes through them. We have to be medication certified so that we can give meds to our clients. We have to be first aid, CPR. We have to, just like a regular nurse, we have to have all of the training. We just don't do what nurses do. We just go in the home and teach these people try to teach them how to live an independent life as well as they can with their disability. A lot of them are in wheelchairs. A lot of them are bedfast. Some of them have the mentality of maybe a 10-year-old, but they are in an adult world, and we have to try to help them to learn to adjust to that adult world.
Now, ma'am, how long has your son lived with his father?
Well, let's see. Willie was living in Wynnewood when I arrived, when I lived in Wynnewood. So he was up there in, well, I'm trying to remember, 2009, I believe. 2010, Willie was living in Wynnewood, about 3 miles from me. And then when I got my divorce and I moved back to Ringling, at that time, Willie was moving back to Leon to be close to his dad.
So would it be accurate to say he has probably lived with his dad the last 2 or 3 years or something like that?
Yes, sir.
But before that, did he live apart from his dad?
Yes, sir.
Has he lived apart from his dad the majority of his adult life?
Yes, sir.
Outside of the last 2 or 3 years that he has been with his dad, do you recall him ever living with his dad?
Just when he was 13, he lived with his dad for maybe a year, and then he moved back home with me.
So as an adult, prior to this last 2 or 3 years, you don't ever recall him living with his dad?
No.
Ma'am, are you close to your son?
Yes, sir, I am.
Do you believe your son has a drug problem?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are you desirous of your son getting some help,
Yes, sir, I am.
getting some treatment?
Yes, sir.
And based on your conversation with Willie, is Willie desirous of getting help, treatment?
Yes, sir, we've discussed it many a time.
Your Honor, I passed the witness, Mr. Horn. Wait, I've got one more question, if I could. Sure. Ma'am, if Willie was released under the conditions that he go to an inpatient drug rehab facility pending the resolution of this case, as a mother, would you do all that you could in your power to help him get through that treatment?
Yes, sir, I would.
Would you do everything in your power to make sure that he stayed in the program and did what he was required of him in this program?
Yes, sir.
Would you do everything in your power to help him comply with the rules and conditions that the probation office would have for him
Yes, sir.
and that the court would have for him?
Yes, sir.
And would you do everything in your power to make sure that he made his court appearance and was available to meet with his attorney and meet with the probation office and other court designated personnel?
Yes, sir, I would. Line 22.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Please pass the witness. Mr. Horn, cross-examination. You would advise your son to follow those rules because you believe in the rules is that right?
Yes, sir, I do.
And if he strayed, you would give him the advice to continue to follow these rules
Yes, sir, I would.
because rules are important,
Yes, sir, that's why we have them.
and that would be cooperating with whatever probation says needs to be done,
Yes, sir.
cooperating with this court with every rule or requirement that this court puts on him.
I request that my son tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and that's all I can do. That's all we can do as a parent.
And you would give him that, and you have given him that advice all of your life, being a mother to this son,
Yes, sir.
to cooperate.
Yes, sir.
And have you given him that advice in the last couple of weeks since he has been in jail?
I've told Willie that from the time he was big enough to understand.
Ma'am, that was a yes or no question.
Yes, I have told.
And you realize your jail phone calls are being recorded?
Yes, sir, I know.
And you realize that these FBI agents have listened to your calls?
Yes, sir.
And in jail, I'm sorry, and you realize that you are under oath?
Yes, sir.
And in jail, and while your son has been in jail, have you advised him, don't say nothing, don't cooperate because you don't know nothing?
I told him you can't tell something that you don't know.
And then, ma'am, did you also say in that same phone call, excuse the language to the court, fuck the feds?
No, I didn't say fuck the feds.
That's not you?
No, I don't say that about people.
So in those conversations, if these agents have a phone call about that, that's not you?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor. The court. Mr. Hopkins, no further questions. You may step down, ma'am. Thank you. Call your next witness. Mr. Hopkins says, Your Honor, I have no further witnesses. I just have a proffer I would like to make. You may make the proffer that if my client was called to the stand, that my client would readily admit that he has a drug problem and that he is in need of treatment, that he is seeking treatment. The court, any objections to this proffer, Mr. Horn? No, Your Honor, the proffer is accepted and that he is desirous of treatment. The court, anything further? Mr. Hopkins, nothing further. The court, Mr. Horn? Mr. Horn, no further evidence, Your Honor. Just as an argument, Your Honor, this is a presumptive crime. We would argue that this defendant has not rebutted the presumption that only is associated with the crime, but also the evidence that this defendant would be a threat. Sorry. To the community and certainly a threat to any witnesses should he be released. Thank you. The court, thank you. Mr. Hopkins, Your Honor, you know when you look at the criminal record of the lack of a criminal record, It just doesn't match up with the government's allegations against my client. He has no prior arrest for any. He has never been arrested for charges with any violent crime. He has no prior controlled substance arrests. We have had a lot of hearsay statements today that people have said, a lot of these things, Your Honor, and they just go on to talk about what all was discussed. And I'll get down to the nitty gritty. The court. Thank you. Once again, the court notes that this is the rebuttal presumption for detention, and the court finds that the defendant has failed to rebut that presumption as he poses a history of flight risk and a danger to the community and should be detained. Anything further? No.
I think you lost a place, honey.
I skipped some of it, of what the attorney said. That's it. That's all of it. Does anybody have any questions? Was the corruption pretty evident in going over that court case?
You need me for anything?
I hope you all found this very interesting. I would just like to say that anyone who watches this, if you have any tips to give to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where you can contact Molly Miller's aunt, Paula, especially through that Facebook page, Operation Find Molly Miller and Colt Haynes. It's mainly named Operation Find Molly Miller. Thank you, Dolly. No one has any questions? I guess we covered it pretty well then. It is disgusting, Jackie. It's very disgusting. It's a sad, sad situation. I wish they would find Molly and Colt. They did have reportedly a cadaver dog did hit on an area, and they dug that area up but found no evidence. And the area was a burn pile. It was a burn pile on some property out there. And the owner of the land reported he didn't burn anything on his land. He didn't know what that fire was for, who set the fire. There wasn't any evidence of a lightning strike there that could have caused a fire. They did dig and found a lot of ashes, but that was it. The sheriff now, he's not in jail, he's free. He's not a sheriff. So he has no power in Love County anymore legally. Thank you, Carol. Willie was 40 at the time of this court hearing. Molly's 17. Colt Haynes was 21 and Con Nip was 22, I believe. And I didn't tell you this, but Colt has a little boy. And I'm not sure how old his little boy is now. So it left his little boy without a daddy. I'm not sure where Willie is. I don't think he's still in prison. I'm not sure if he's with his dad or living on his own. Oh, I bet, darling, I bet that 3-year-old's very busy. Probably wants all your attention. I'm not sure if there's been a civil case considered. I know there's one discussed and people have recommended it to them to do a civil case to see if it turns into anything more. I don't think there's been a grand jury investigation done on Molly and Colt's disappearance either. Yeah, Jenny, it would bring attention to the facts of the case.
I would say that from everything his lawyer was saying, now, his dad still was found guilty of corruption, so that pretty kind of puts it, would probably be true, what they were saying.
Yeah, Joe Russell was found guilty of corruption, the sheriff, and of ignoring things. Molly Miller, her grandfather, was very instrumental in all of this too. And sadly, he passed away recently. He got to see, got sick and passed away from it. And there's someone else that passed. Oh, the sheriff that replaced Joe. I'm not sure if he was the immediate replacement or the replacement after that. He passed away. He was trying to help the family, and he's passed away. And I can tell you that the district attorney, Ladd, he has retired. So that could be helpful for the family to have a new district attorney in office. It is crazy, Lisa D. It's crazy that this corruption can still be going on in this day and age. Very sad. Thank you, Lucy. Not sure when or what my next case is going to be, but I'll find one. I'm trying to look local here in Oklahoma at cases, so we'll see what I can come up with. You're right, Lisa. Someone needs to take an active interest. They need to get a grand jury gathered and make a decision about what to do. Now, I can tell you from listening to Paula talk, the cousin of Molly, she doesn't really believe that Con did anything to Molly and Colt. I think they believe that it was someone else that was out on the property that may have done something to them. If nobody has any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and close. And as usual, I normally close with a prayer. So I will close with a prayer tonight. And let me get my prayer list pulled up. Okay, dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight with many needs and many thanks. You know our heart, you know our needs, you know the needs of the people I'm going to talk about. Dear Lord, please help something happen in this Molly Miller and Colt Haynes case. Let their families have some kind of, it's not closure, but you know what I mean, Lord. Let them find Molly and Colt. Let them at least have their family members with them where they know where they are. Jesus, please, you know the needs of the following people. So pray for Davida and her family, Clarissa, Aurora, Lisa D and her parents. Help me Rhonda's sister, Suzanne, Thing One's sister, Lynn, Tracy's dad, Carol Clark, and anyone else that needs anything. Please answer their prayer, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I know, Lucy J, that's crazy. Dear Lord, I forgot to mention the things that are going on in Israel. Prayers for peace and for this war to stop. Again, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll see you soon. And as always, if anybody needs anything, email me. I'm here. If anyone has a case that they know of in Oklahoma that I should look at, send me an email. I'll look at it. Thank you. Have a good Saturday night, everyone. Love and hugs. God bless.